I'm Christina Pirello, and in 1983, when I was 26, I was diagnosed with terminal leukemia, acute lymphocytic leukemia. And they told me that I had 6 months to live. And even if they did protocols, which were experimental, I might live 9 months. My white cell count was off the chart. My hemoglobin was terrible. My platelets were terrible. And I was anemic. And they were surprised that I was walking around. And the only symptom I had was I was tired. And I'd gone for a physical because I was bruising, and I couldn't understand why I was getting these bruises that wouldn't go away. So I decided to go to the doctor. And I was young. I was 26. You don't expect that kind of bad news when, you're that young. So they said I had 6 months to live, and I decided that I would move back to Europe, where I had lived a couple years before, and I was very happy. I lived for a year in Tuscany, and I wasn't going to do anything because I thought, if I'm going to die in 6 months, why would I have these experimental therapies that would make me lose my hair? Which was the only thing I cared about at the time. I didn't want to lose my hair. So I decided I would do nothing. And as I was packing up my office, because I was working as an illustrator at the time, a friend of mine came in and said, "You have to meet this guy I know." And I thought, I don't need a date. I need to figure out how I'm going to save my life. And he said he eats this very strange food. He eats seaweed. And he says it cures cancer. And I thought, oh, God. All right. I said, look, I'm not leaving for a week. I'll meet him. And it was Robert Pirello, whom I later married. And he taught me about macrobiotics and showed me, the way to eat. And I was a vegetarian, so I was sort of surprised that I had gotten sick. I thought I was pretty healthy. But as he asked me more questions about my diet, I realized that I basically lived on sugar and chocolate and coffee and everything chemically sweetened, diet sodas. I was a typical single woman, Anything that was artificially sweetened was better than sugar, so I ate all those chemicals and realized that that's what caused my illness. But it took me a long time to realize that. So I told him since I only had 6 months, I'd give him 1 month because the food seemed very strange to me. He had made me a meal of brown rice salad, corn on the cob, arame, and kale. I thought kale was the garnish on a salad bar. I didn't know you actually ate it. The only thing I recognized on the plate was corn. And then he spread umeboshi paste on it, and I thought, oh my God, what is that? So I ate this meal and thought it was horrible, but I would try it. I figured it was harmless, and it wouldn't do any good anyway, but why not give it a try? 1 month later, I was in remission when I went to the doctor, and they said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm eating this diet. And they said, yeah, but what are you doing to get better? And I said, no, I'm eating this diet. And I brought them all these books that Michio Kushi had written, and, look at this and look at this. And they said, eating brown rice isn't going to affect your illness. And I said, well, it's what I'm doing. So they agreed to monitor my blood every 2 weeks until I got worse, and then they would intervene. That's the agreement I had to make with them. So I said, okay, I would do that. I still didn't think this would work. I thought it was sort of a fluke that I was getting a little bit better. And they said sometimes it happened, that you go in remission, out of remission. The next month I was worse, much worse again. So I thought, okay, it's not working. So Robert said to me, really, you have to give it 1 more month. 3 months, you have to give it 3 months. And I said, but I only have 6. If I give you 3, then I don't have 3 left. And I'm not eating chocolate. So he said, okay, try 1 more month. I said, all right. In 1 more month, I was in what they called spontaneous regression, which was the disease actually improving, not just remission. And they had no idea what was going on. So, and as it went on, it took 14 and a half months for my blood to be normal. And the day they declared me normal, and I had lots of ups and downs, discharges, my hair falling out, acne came, and I would cry for days on end and very weak, and then I would feel better, and then my skin would break out again, and then dry skin, and then oily skin, and just all this, which as I look back now was the most interesting experience because I didn't work with a counselor. I just used Michio's books, and if it said, don't eat this, I didn't eat it. Like there was no room for, there was no gray area. It was black or white. He said no fruit, no fruit. He said no this, no that. He said no cracked grains, nothing. I didn't eat even bulgur or noodles, just brown rice. So it was basically a starvation diet, but it worked, but all these toxins kept coming out, and as I look back now, I learned so much because it was very fascinating. Not when you're in it, but later, it was great. So they took my blood after 14 and a half months, and the technician came out and took blood again, and she took blood 4 times. Finally, I said, what's wrong? Because I felt great. And she said, the doctor needs to see you, there's a problem. I said, okay. So I went into his office, and he said, you're slightly anemic. And I said, well, in light of the other problems, I don't think that's so bad. And he said, we can't find any leukemia in your blood at all. And I said, so what would the problem be? And he said, well, we don't know what happened. I said, oh, well, I'm eating this diet. And I showed them again, I'm eating this diet, brown rice. And he said, that's not what made you better. And I said, well, what do you think it is? And he said, sometimes I think God just makes a miracle. And I got really enraged. And I said, wait a minute. You would rather say miracle, which of course God had a hand in it. I'm obviously supposed to be here. You would rather say miracle than I ate this food, had a chemical reaction in my body, and got better. Just like when you take a drug. And he said, it's absolutely impossible. So I'm so angry. I go out of his office and I call my husband, and I'm ranting and raving on the phone. My husband, who's very calm, said, what do you care? You're better. And I thought, oh yeah, I forgot that. I'm better. So I left his office, and I decided to go back to work as an illustrator because now I was 27 years old, my whole life ahead of me. I'd had this great, and I didn't think that macrobiotics was going to affect me any other way except I got better. And this was the way I ate now. I'd become a really good cook, and people could actually eat my food. It wasn't so plain anymore. I started taking cooking classes, and I read every book I could find. So I decided to go back to work as an illustrator. And I lasted about 2 weeks. And I walked into my boss's office one day and I said, I can't do this anymore. It doesn't mean anything. I have to do something with my life. I mean, I'm still here. And he said, well, you are doing something with your life. I said, no, not this. So I was walking down the street in Philadelphia where I lived, and there was a little natural food store that had a sign in the window that said, cook wanted. So I walked in, and I knew the woman who owned the store because that's where I shopped, and I said, are you still looking for a cook? And she said, yeah. I said, well, I like the job. And she said, how much money do you make as an illustrator? I said, I don't know, about $75,000 a year. She said, I'm paying $7 an hour. I said, I'll take it. So I took the job, and I started cooking in her little kitchen, and we made lunch for about 300 people every day. Just cooked and cooked and cooked, and I got better and better and better. And at night, we would do cooking classes at her lunch counter for people with AIDS, which were a lot of her customers. And from there, I decided to study more and more. So at the time, the Cushy Institute was in Brookline, Massachusetts. So I went there to study. I studied in Philadelphia. I read everything I could find, took every seminar with Micho that I could get my hands on. And after about a year and a half, he said to me, I think you should teach. And I said, oh, no, I don't get up in front of people. That's terrible. I could never do that. And he said, well, your kidneys are still weak, but you should consider it. So I told my cooking teacher that, and she said, well, why don't you assist me in class? I said, okay. So I was in the back kitchen cooking, and one day she said, I want you to go out there and teach the salad dressing. And I said, oh, no, I don't know. I went out, and I never looked up. To this day, I couldn't tell you if there were 2 people in class or 50. Never looked up. I said, put oil, vinegar, and herbs, shake it up, pour it on the salad, and I walked away. That was it. But every week she made me teach a little more. And then from there, I started doing cooking classes, and from there, my husband worked on a television show. So now we do macrobiotic cooking on national television in the States. So I guess my kidneys got stronger because I'm not so afraid anymore. But it was, I'm not doing one thing in my life that I had planned on doing. So it transformed everything.